To be born into a family is to be born into destiny. Yet not every destiny begins in warmth and love. Some begin in silence, neglect, or even cruelty. For many, the first experience of life is not safety, but tension, a household charged with anger, manipulation, or shame. And so the question rises in the soul like a haunting echo. Why was I born into this family? What possible purpose could there be for such pain? Carl Jung devoted his life to exploring these mysteries of the human psyche. He believed nothing in life is random, not even suffering, especially not the family we are born into. To Jung, the family is the first vessel of the unconscious. It is where archetypes, the great spiritual forces, first reveal themselves, for better or worse. In a toxic family, these forces often appear in distorted, painful forms. But Jung insisted that even these distortions are not meaningless. They are part of a deeper, spiritual pattern. When you are born into a toxic family, life is not punishing you. Life is initiating you. The pain you endured is not proof of your weakness, but the beginning of your transformation. What feels like a curse is, at a deeper level, a call to individuation, the journey toward becoming your true self. In this exploration, we will uncover 6 keys from Jung's psychology that explain why toxic families exist in our lives, and how their wounds can become the very soil from which wholeness grows. Remember, the darkness of your beginning does not determine your end. It may, in fact, be the very reason your light will shine more brightly than you can yet imagine. The family as the first mirror. From the very beginning of life, the family becomes the first mirror through which the child sees themselves. Carl Jung taught us that the psyche develops through images, symbols, and projections. In a toxic family, that mirror is cracked. Instead of reflecting truth, it reflects distortion, shame, control, manipulation, or neglect. The child grows not with a sense of I am, but with a haunting question, what's wrong with me? Jung would say, nothing is wrong with you. What is wrong is the mirror. Yet the child cannot know this. The unconscious absorbs the toxic family's emotional climate like a sponge. Patterns of criticism, fear, and suppression sink into the deep psyche. Later in life, these inner images reappear as low self-worth, destructive relationships, or endless cycles of guilt. But here lies the spiritual reason. The psyche does not trap you here by accident. Being born into a toxic family forces the confrontation with the shadow earlier than most. It strips away the fantasy of perfect parents, pushing you to awaken to your own soul. It is a brutal initiation. Where others may spend years hiding from inner wounds, you are confronted with them from the start. So the first key is this. The toxic family is not your identity, but your initiation. Their distortions are not a life sentence. They are the forge in which your awareness is hammered. Pain becomes the beginning of individuation. The family as the first mirror, 300 words. From the very beginning of life, the family becomes the first mirror through which the child sees themselves. Carl Jung taught us that the psyche develops through images, symbols, and projections. In a toxic family, that mirror is cracked. Instead of reflecting truth, it reflects distortion, shame, control, manipulation, or neglect. The child grows not with a sense of I am, but with a haunting question. What's wrong with me? Jung would say, nothing is wrong with you. What is wrong is the mirror, yet the child cannot know this. The unconscious absorbs the toxic family's emotional climate like a sponge. Patterns of criticism, fear, and suppression sink into the deep psyche. Later in life, these inner images reappear as low self-worth, destructive relationships, or endless cycles of guilt. But here lies the spiritual reason. The psyche does not trap you here by accident. Being born into a toxic family forces the confrontation with the shadow earlier than most. It strips away the fantasy of perfect parents, pushing you to awaken to your own soul. It is a brutal initiation. Where others may spend years hiding from inner wounds, you are confronted with them from the start. So the first key is this. The toxic family is not your identity, but your initiation. Their distortions are not a life sentence. They are the forge in which your awareness is hammered. Pain becomes the beginning of individuation, the archetype of the wounded. Healer Carl Jung often spoke of archetypes, the deep universal patterns of the psyche. One of the most profound archetypes is the wounded healer. This figure appears in myths, stories, and religions across the world. The one who suffers deeply often becomes the one who heals others. When you are born into a toxic family, you are thrust directly into this archetype. The wound you carry is not only personal, it is archetypal. It connects you with countless others who have walked through the valley of family pain, and this wound is not meaningless. Jung reminds us, suffering can become the very source of wisdom, empathy, and healing. Think of the healer who comforts the broken because they themselves know what it is to be broken. Think of the teacher who guides others through despair because they themselves have tasted it. Your toxic upbringing, while cruel, becomes the raw material for such transformation. Without it, your compassion might remain shallow. With it, your heart understands depths that cannot be faked. This is why many spiritual teachers, therapists, and guides come from painful beginnings. They did not choose suffering, but they were chosen by it. Their family pain pressed them into inner work, and their healing became a gift to the world. Here is the paradox. Your family may have given you wounds, but those wounds can be transmuted into light. You become, in Jung's words, a vessel of individuation, not only for yourself, but for others. To heal yourself is to carry forward healing into the collective. Thus, the spiritual reason for being born into a toxic family may not only be about your own growth, it may be about awakening the archetype of the wounded healer within you. Confronting the ancestral shadow, 500 words. Jung taught that the psyche is not just individual but collective. Each family carries an unconscious inheritance, the ancestral shadow. These are unresolved traumas, unspoken secrets, addictions, abuses, betrayals, and losses that echo silently through generations. In a toxic family, you are confronted with this shadow directly. You may notice the repetition. The father drinks as his father did. The mother sacrifices herself as her mother did. Violence echoes from one generation to the next. The family cannot see it. They are possessed by it. But you, the one who suffers consciously, begin to awaken. Why were you born into such a system? Spiritually, Jung would say, because the shadow needed a witness. The family itself cannot heal what it denies. It needs one who sees clearly, one who refuses to look away, one who breaks the silence. That one may be you. Confronting the ancestral shadow is terrifying. It feels disloyal, even blasphemous, to name the pain your family hides. Yet this act is profoundly spiritual. Jung insisted that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. To heal your family shadow is to do precisely this. And healing does not mean fixing everyone else. It means refusing to carry their darkness blindly. It means saying, the pain stops with me. By choosing awareness, you prevent the shadow from passing further down the line. Thus, being born into a toxic family is not random. It is as if life chose you as the one to confront the ancestral shadow. You carry a burden, yes, but also a sacred responsibility to make conscious what has been unconscious for generations. Liberation. Through separation to Jung, individuation always requires separation from the collective, and the family is the first collective. In a toxic family, this separation becomes not just important, but urgent. If you do not step away, psychologically or sometimes physically, you risk being swallowed by their patterns. But separation is not abandonment. It is liberation. It is the moment you realize, I am not just a role within my family, I am a soul with my own destiny. This realization can feel like betrayal because toxic families thrive on enmeshment, the idea that your life belongs to them. Breaking away, then, is often punished with guilt or rejection. Yet spiritually, This is the hero's journey. Just as the mythic hero must leave the village to discover their destiny, you too must leave the toxic family narrative. This does not always mean cutting all ties. It means cutting the invisible strings that bind your worth to their approval. Jung explained that individuation requires courage to face loneliness. You must endure the emptiness of no longer belonging to their world before you can create your own. But this loneliness is fertile. Out of it, the self begins to reveal itself. When you separate, you do not destroy the family bond. You transform it. You cease being a passive player in their unconscious drama and become a conscious being in your own right. Then, and only then, can you return, not as a child trapped in their web, but as an adult standing in truth. Thus, being born into a toxic family may have forced you into separation earlier and more radically than others. Painful though it is, this separation is your doorway to true freedom. The role of synchronicity. One of Jung's most mysterious contributions is the idea of synchronicity, meaningful coincidences that reveal the hidden order of life. When you are born into a toxic family, synchronicities often appear as guiding lights. Perhaps a teacher appeared in your life at just the right time, offering encouragement your parents never gave. Perhaps a book fell into your hands, speaking words that pierced your despair. Perhaps chance encounters led you to therapy, spirituality, or friendship when you needed it most. These are not accidents. Jung believed they are the self-guiding you, life itself conspiring to help you escape the prison of your family complex. Why is this spiritual reason important? Because it shows that even in the darkest family environments you were never abandoned. The unconscious, or the self, was always weaving threads of meaning to lead you toward growth. The toxic family gave you the wound, but life itself gave you the tools, mentors, and opportunities to heal. Pay attention. Synchronicities often intensify when you resist repeating family patterns. They whisper, you are on the right path. They confirm that your suffering is not in vain, that your story has a trajectory beyond survival. Thus, being born into a toxic family does not mean you are cursed. It means your journey will unfold through a dance of suffering and synchronicity, shadow and guidance. Every coincidence that saved you, every pattern that led you toward healing, is evidence that your life carries meaning far deeper than the pain of your beginning. Transcending victimhood. Jung warned against identifying with victimhood. While acknowledging trauma is vital, to remain only a victim is to remain bound to the past. The psyche seeks not only to survive, but to transform. Being born into a toxic family places you in danger of permanent victim identity. Because they hurt me, I will never be whole. This belief is seductive but destructive. Jung would say, the moment you accept this identity, the family still owns you. Their toxicity lives inside you. The spiritual reason, then, is not to chain you to suffering, but to push you into transcendence. You must claim your story as your own. You were hurt, yes. You were shaped by pain, yes. But you are not only that pain. Individuation requires you to move from victim to creator. This does not mean denying the trauma. It means refusing to let it define your essence. It means using the wound as fuel for wisdom, creativity, and depth. Many of Jung's patients discovered that their greatest suffering became their greatest strength once they no longer clung to it as an identity. When you transcend victimhood, you discover freedom. The toxic family no longer dictates your worth. You reclaim your shadow, you embrace your complexity, and you live from the self rather than from wounds. Thus, the spiritual purpose of a toxic family is paradoxical. It gave you the possibility of transcendence. Without the wound, there would be no healing. Without the pain, no wisdom. To step beyond victimhood is to fulfill this hidden purpose. The call to the self. In the end, Jung's psychology points us toward the self, the totality of who we are, conscious and unconscious, personal and collective, human and divine. Every toxic family story, no matter how dark, can become the beginning of this journey. Why were you born into a toxic family? From the Jungian view, because your soul required the fire of transformation. Comfort does not push the psyche toward depth. Conflict does. Pain cracks the shell of the persona, forcing you to search for something greater. The toxic family, then, is not the end of your story, but the beginning of your calling. This calling is not about fixing your family or seeking their approval. It is about becoming whole. It is about integrating shadow, confronting ancestral patterns, transcending victimhood, and listening to the guidance of the self. Through this, you discover that your destiny is not defined by your beginnings, but by what you make of them. In this sense, the toxic family is a crucible. It burns away illusions, so that something authentic can be born. Individuation is the process of answering that call. When you respond, you not only free yourself, you bring light into the collective. And so, the spiritual reason for being born into a toxic family is this. You were chosen to walk the difficult road so that you might awaken to depths others never touch. Your pain was the doorway. Your transformation is the answer. Your life, when lived authentically, becomes the very proof that darkness cannot extinguish the self.